I'm going to try to start a new series where I do a review for a movie that I feel doesn't get the credit it deserves. Whether it be from critics, based on how much money it made, or people just don't talk about it enough. I don't think any of them will contain spoilers, including this one, since my goal with these is to get more people to watch the movies I discuss, so including spoilers would be very counterintuitive. For my first underappreciated movie review, I would like to discuss Edge of Tomorrow, which is one of my favorite movies. The movie has a 91% critic score and a 90% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, which are both great and fitting scores. However, it made only $370 million at the worldwide box office, which is not impressive considering how much money the movie cost to make. People also don't talk about this movie when discussing the greatest alien invasion movies of the last 20 or so years, and it certainly belongs in that conversation. And I believe it also belongs in the conversation of best alien invasion movies of all time. As I already said, this review will not contain spoilers, but I will discuss the basic plot that you would find on, say, IMDb, and minor plot points, and I will vaguely discuss a few major plot points. So if you don't want to know anything, then I would advise not watching this video until you watch the movie, but if you're not going to watch the review now, I do say you should really watch this movie. It is really good, it's very entertaining, and I'm now going to discuss more in detail why it's really good. So make sure to like, subscribe, and follow DM Reviews on Twitter. The link should be in the description. So without further ado, I'm going to get into my review of Edge of Tomorrow. Edge of Tomorrow released in May of 2014 and was directed by Doug Liman and stars Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt, and Bill Paxton. The movie follows a PR officer for the Army as the world is being attacked by aliens, as he is forced into the front lines of battle, but soon he realizes, once he dies, the day resets and he has another chance to save the world. First off, this movie is extremely creative and unique. The plot is brilliant, and they could not have executed it better. It is based off of a book called All You Need Is Kill. And I've never read that book, I don't know what it's about, and so I'm not entirely sure how similar it is to Edge of Tomorrow and to its plot, but even if the book has the same idea and the same storyline, same characters, the movie did such a great job at executing this great idea, which I don't know where it's from, so this movie is extremely impressive either way. And even if it is the same exact thing, and the book was executed in a similar fashion, like being really good, it's still impressive because as most people know, many book adaptations are not always super impressive. So, considering that how impressive this one is and how good it is, this movie is extremely impressive, regardless of what the book was like. The acting in this movie is really good. I've not seen too many. I'm working on watching a few more, but this movie is easily my favorite Tom Cruise movie, and it's definitely one of the best performances of his that I've seen. Emily Blunt is also really good, and so is Bill Paxton. In this movie, Tom Cruise plays a coward. When he is told he has to go into war, he threatens to blackmail people and he tries to escape. He doesn't play an action hero. That role is more for Emily Blunt in this movie. Here, he plays Bill Cage, who comes into the movie with no knowledge on how to fight, and he has to learn how to be a soldier and how to be a hero. This is easily one of my favorite parts of the movie, and I'm surprised they didn't market this part of the movie more. Along with a very interesting plot, this is easily one of the more unique parts of the movie. Most of these type movies are at least maybe they're not centered about action heroes like your Arnold Schwarzeneggers and your Sylvester Stallones, but at least they have to do with people who want to be there. Like they're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna save the world. For our main character he doesn't want to be there. He's trying to run away for a while at the beginning. So it makes this movie very unique, and it really, it's a great idea, and I'm happy that they didn't have him be like an action hero. Like that's what he has to learn to become. Once he has realized that he has lived all these events before, the movie is surprisingly funny. They have him running around trying to save people, but he is never able to save them, and they manage to find a lot of unlikely humor in that. They did a great job of finding the humor in the situation, while not overdoing it. There aren't many jokes, they are few and far between, but when they do decide to make it funny, it really is, and it only adds to the movie. I talked about this briefly in my Die Hard video, but some movies, maybe they don't rely on themselves to entertain you, or for whatever reason, they overdo the jokes, and in a movie where they don't necessarily want jokes. In comedies, have all the jokes you want, but in more serious movies like this one and like Die Hard, as I discussed in that video, you can't really overdo the jokes, and neither of these movies do it. But really, here it's so clear that they clearly had the script ready, and then they thought, oh, here maybe there's a joke here. Like it wasn't like they did things just to set up jokes. Like they had jokes when they thought they could do them, but they didn't change the story or moments just to have them, and that's really impressive. And I really do admire that because I'm sure it's very difficult. Edge of Tomorrow also has one of my favorite romances in any movie. One of them has spent so much time with the other and has fallen in love with the other one, while the other has just met them. It is also so tragic that one of them has to watch the other die over and over and over again. This romance is easily one of my favorite parts of the movie, and that is very high praise considering how much I love pretty much every aspect of this movie. As I mentioned before, this movie had a huge budget. As a result, it relies very heavily on CGI, and I have to say, it looks incredible. It really looked like they used a lot of practical effects and stunts too, which wouldn't surprise me considering how willing to do his own stunts Tom Cruise is. And I've also seen in interviews that Emily Blunt said that she did a few of her stunts as well because, she didn't want to be she didn't want Tom Cruise to be doing all these crazy stunts and then she does none of them, so she also did some of her own stunts. So, for such a complicated plot, this movie has a surprisingly small amount of plot holes. They did a really good job at explaining exactly why everything was happening in a logical way that made sense, and the lack of plot holes made the movie a lot more enjoyable. There are a few exposition scenes, but I don't really mind them, since they make sense for them to happen for the story, and there was really no other way to give us the information other than having the characters tell us in an exposition-like fashion, but at least they were able to make it make sense with the story. However, the movie does open with clips from random news broadcasts, which tell us exactly what we need to know, and that is probably my only negative about the movie. There was such an easy way to avoid this. The main character is in charge of getting people to sign up for the war. Just have him on the news going over what's happened and why the people need to sign up for the army, since, maybe the army's finally, about to get the upper hand, so, oh, no, you have to join to help us do that. It would be a far more effective way to introduce our protagonist and give us background as to what's going on. Considering that the main character can't actually die, they did a really good job at maintaining a high level of intensity and keeping the stakes high. They primarily do this with great ideas with the lore that manage to keep you interested in the story and what is happening to the characters. They also do this by creating other great characters so you care about them as well. But that doesn't really help with that, but it is something that also helps you care about the main character and his journey, which also helps you care more even if, some of the characters can't die. Before I get into spoilers, I just want to say that I highly recommend this movie. I'm going to give Edge of Tomorrow an A. The only problem is it opens with random clips of news to explain what is happening, and as I said, I believe there were more effective ways to do this. But outside of that, this movie is really perfect. Now I want to talk about the ending with spoilers. I really loved this ending. It took reading a couple articles for me to fully understand what it was, but once I realized what the ending was, I realized how brilliant it is. It does a really good job at concluding the romance between Cage and Rita, and it was so good that if the movie never gets a sequel, that is completely fine. And on the topic of a sequel, I don't think I want one. Not only do I have no idea where a sequel would go, but I also don't think it would have a chance to be as good as the original, so I don't think it's worth it. If they did one, I would be super excited for it, but I think I'd prefer they not bother with one. Also, a sequel would have to undermine what Cage did, and by doing that, it would undermine this movie. I would assume that a sequel would deal with maybe the alien threat is not completely gone, but by doing that, it would undermine everything that Cage did, because we believe one of the reasons that what he did was so heroic is that he, saved the human race, or helped with that. So if you say that the alien threat isn't really gone, then it makes it feel like, he didn't do anything as important as we thought it was. But if they did do a sequel, I would certainly be excited for that, and I'd be very interested to see where it would go. So that is it for my first underappreciated movie review. Please comment if you want me to continue the series, and also comment if you want a sequel for Edge of Tomorrow, and what you thought of the first one.